Hey guys, welcome back to the Aspie World Podcast. What is going on today? Very special guest. I'm excited to talk to them about everything that they're doing. And also, if you haven't already subscribed, I can see you listening and not subscribed to the podcast. So make sure to hit the subscribe button. You guys are beautiful. Let's get into it. Hey Sam, how's it going? It's good to have you on here. Do I call you Dr. Shay, Dr. Sam Shay? Like, how do I say it?
Dr. Sam is fine.
Dr. Sam, how is it going? Please, for my audience sake, because obviously they're not going to know who you are, maybe, or maybe they do. I would love for you to just a little bit of an intro, who you are and what you're up to, what you're doing.
Absolutely. So I'm a neurospicy doc who supports people who are also neurospicy and also helps translate for people who are more on the more quote normative spectrum, understand our lives, our minds, and what we're about and what we struggle with and what our aspirations are. And I have been officially, air quotes, diagnosed as ADHD. And I don't know who first started this joke. I can't claim it, but it's perfect. Like I've only recently I was diagnosed, but I've always been peer reviewed as being. And I wish I knew who that because I'm also a professional comic, so I would love to credit the person who came up with that joke. I just don't know who it is. I saw it on somewhere. And my role is that I support people on the spectrum in two specific ways. Number one is I educate and advocate for those of us who are neurospicy through stand-up comedy and platforms like this, but uniquely it's through stand-up comedy. And I have a 1 hour show that's completely free on YouTube. That's called Neurospicy, Love, Life, and Comedy on the Spectrum. It's a 1 hour show called Neurospicy, Love, Life, and Comedy on the Spectrum. And for those that are curious, it's clean observational comedy with no cursing, no politics, no gratuitous body fluid jokes. It was written and designed and performed so that it is family friendly and it is, false modesty aside, hilarious, but really, really educational. And it's arguably one of the hardest types of comedy to write, simply because I'm not leaning on um, a lot of tropes of cursing and whatnot. No, don't get me wrong. I love comics who curse and that if they do asterisk if they do it well.
Yeah.
Like it'd be a crime to remove curse words from Eddie Murphy's set from his show. Like it'd be absolute crime to do that. That's just not my
Yeah.
style. And I did it very intentionally, simply because I wanted it to be accessible to families.
A bit Jim
If you
Gaffigan-y, right? Like Jim Gaffigan has a similar approach.
100%. I actually the two primary models of my comedy are Jerry Seinfeld and Jim Gaffigan.
Oh yeah,
Uh,
Seinfeld. I was talking about Seinfeld, isn't it? Yeah.
well, Seinfeld's actually self professed autistic.
No
And
way, dude.
oh,
Like,
absolutely, 100%. So, and if you look at him, and if you look at his comedy, because there's lots of documentaries and people talking about, Seinfeld was like one of the most popular comedy shows in the world,
yeah,
and like the dynamic he set on set was like he hates drama. He doesn't like he just wants everything really rhythmic, like clockwork,
yeah.
absolutely no drama, does not want to be dysregulated. He writes for 2 hours a day, every day, for the past 50 years. He says there's three things he does every day: exercise, meditate, comedy. And like and when you look at the way he well acts, I wouldn't call him an actor, I call him a comedian, because like
Yeah, yeah.
he lacks prosody. He's very ma ma ma, 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 ma. He doesn't have that melodic toning. Now I have more melody in my voice, but that's trained because I
Trained,
have
yeah,
a
yeah.
I have a
Same.
really large singing background, including voice lessons and like I this is trained. This is trained.
Mhm.
When I'm tired or exhausted or super stressed, I get very robotic and literal, hyper literal. I
100%.
lose my
I relate.
yeah, like I lose my frontal lobe training. Like I revert backwards into my brainstem or whatever. And so Seinfeld is, and I had the joy of watching him perform live about 2 years ago,
No way.
and he's very, like, when he delivers a joke, it's
Yeah.
very calculated. And now I was watching him from the lens of being a comic, so I was loving the humor, but I was analyzing him, and he did the same thing, which was effective. He says, "Setup, reinforcement, punchline." And he would wait, and I was like, took me a half hour of the hour, 90-minute show to figure out what was he doing, because he would address this quadrant of the audience, then the other quadrant, then he would deliver the punchline dead on and freeze when he would deliver the punchline.
Mm.
And I was like, what? And then he would suddenly like start moving and start the next joke, but there was this freeze moment. And I realized what he was doing. He was listening for when the laughter peaked, and when it came down to about 60-70% of the peak, then he would start moving. And I realized that when a comic is telling a joke, they tell the punchline and then they start moving, and
Mhm.
people are thinking, oh, he's going to tell the next joke, so their mind leaves the humor because they're now expecting the next joke.
The yeah.
So it was absolutely crisp and calculated and algorithmic, and he was a master. And I'm not that's not a criticism. He
No, no,
figured out
that's
the machinery of it, the pattern.
yeah, yeah,
So
absolutely.
so what I do is I educate and advocate using stand-up comedy.
Yeah.
And then I help individuals who struggle on the spectrum by increasing their self-agency and their resilience and their internal well-being, and their just expanding their capacity through through genetic testing. Now, I'm not talking about genetic
Wow.
testing of like what percentage Irish you are, who's your daddy, or if you've got a specific hardwired genetic issue like trisomy 21. I'm
Yeah,
not
yeah.
talking about that. I'm talking about uh, identifying genetically what you are probabilistically what diet is the most optimally suited for you,
Interesting.
what exercise and recovery, what lifestyle, and what nutrients you need.
Specifically
So,
for autistic people, right?
well,
Or
I do it.
neurodivergent.
I help anyone who's wanting to get their genes tested for these like health and well-being, optimal functioning ways. But I feel like the autistic community could uniquely benefit in a disproportionate way
Mhm.
from this for a couple of reasons. Number one, I look, 3 minutes of my comedy show is just on sensory overwhelm, particularly sound. Like sound is my kryptonite. The high pitched sounds, like it's crippling to me,
It is.
and that's just my particular. If someone asks me, how would you describe neurodiversity? We're born with several superpowers and a buffet of kryptonite. That's that's how I describe it,
The
and
buffet.
the buffet,
It's so
absolute
true.
buffet,
Yeah,
a
it's
buffet
like
line of kryptonite. So what happens is that when we're on the spectrum, we're constantly bombarded
yeah,
with all the sensory input that, depending on which sense organ is most sensitive, we're just overwhelmed by it.
yeah,
So
yeah.
we need as much as possible to minimize the physiological stress we're under in order to not be under so much psychological stress.
Mhm.
Physiological stress directly translates to psychological distress and low resilience. So if you have a blueprint of
Mhm.
optimal exercise, diet, nutrition, and lifestyle, you're
Mhm.
going to massively decrease your internal stress burden,
Mhm.
meaning you'll be able to increase your capacity to navigate a more normative world with all the attending sensory overwhelms.
Mhm.
So so aside from us having lower resilience overall, because I went saw an audiologist, a medical audiologist, because I'm so sound sensitive, and she did all the testing, and she said most people feel physical pain
Mhm.
at 80 decibels of a high pitched tone, 80 decibels.
Holy smokes.
My handicap is it's 40. I have a 40 decibel handicap, meaning that 40 decibels is where I have the massive amount of pain that most people would feel at 80, and that's
Mhm.
measured. So if I have increased physiological resilience and capacity,
Mhm.
I'm less likely to be crippled by some unexpected sensory input. The other
What's the
reason why I think it's unique, go ahead.
sure. Sorry, no, carry on.
The other reason I think it's uniquely beneficial for people on the spectrum is that we love details, granularity, deep dive, special interests. We just love the data. We love to nerd out. I got my giant oversized glasses, doing a little nerd flex with the
Mhm.
glasses pushed up.
I love it. I love it.
Genetics is so overwhelmingly scientific,
Mhm.
and really, like, it's kind of inarguable.
Mhm.
Now, I just want to make it very clear that epigenetics and genetics. Epigenetics is how our environment influences how our genes express. Like our genes, the genes that I'm talking about, that they're not really an on-off switch necessarily. That's more like a dial.
Hmm.
So like how you live your lifestyle influences how your genes express, and we can do something about it. And the genes that I've chosen are the ones that the company that I'm working with has
Hmm.
chosen. Is they've all picked lifestyle recommendations based on human research, not wombats or nematodes or mice or whatever. It's like,
Yeah, like a
what is
test
the
subject is
research?
actually human. Yeah.
It's actually human. Yeah. So you want to work with genetics where where they're showing you the recommendations based on your genes, based on research that's done on humans,
Yeah.
and you're
Yeah.
wanting to look at genes that are the higher level controls, the controls or drivers of the downstream processes. So, for example, I'm not interested in the hundreds of genes that directly or indirectly influence inflammation. I want to
Yeah.
know the top 15 or 16.
Yeah.
Focus there, and then you'll have massive dividends. So I'm not testing hundreds and thousands of genes. I'm testing about 140, and that's it.
Interesting.
And yeah.
Do you get like crazy backlash from people who are saying like you shouldn't be doing, genetic testing with autism? It's a state of mind, or a state of mind. It's a state of being, not something that needs to be fixed. Because a lot of people have like these issues, right, where they say, don't fix autism. I'm like, well,
I'm not
what
host fixing it. I'm embracing my autistic stuff. Yeah.
100%. But I would say that this realm of work, sometimes people
Yeah.
kind of like it can get misconstrued and people can get really upset about it. Have you come across this?
Oh, for sure. And especially, if I'm talking about genetics testing, we're now careening back into the fraught relationship of Dr. Asperger to the Nazi Party. Like,
Oh,
and
wait, that's a big. Have you seen my 26-minute deep dive on this?
I'm so hear me out. I It doesn't matter to me if he was complicit or not. It does, because Asperger's brought the Nazis down.
Hmm.
Oppenheimer, Einstein, and Turing. All of them had Asperger's. I honestly don't care if he was complicit or not. I'm very familiar with the arguments that he was hiding, he was pretending in order to
Mhm.
save his little professors.
Mhm.
I'm familiar with the arguments saying that he was complicit, and I address this in the comedy show. First 5 minutes, I say, I honestly, it doesn't matter, and I'm proud to call myself an Aspie because Asperger's brought the Nazis down.
Mhm.
Full
Mhm.
stop. And I heard about your 26-minute from the gentleman that introduced us. I do plan on
Oh,
watching
really?
it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Read, but that's my stance on it. Oppenheimer, Einstein, Turing. I don't care about Dr. Asperger's political affiliations or lack thereof
Oh,
because we
yeah,
won.
yeah.
Does that make sense?
100%, dude.
Yeah.
S-
So when we're talking about genetics, automatically people can get concerned that we're trying to identify and weed, air quotes, weed people out in some really horrible eugenic way. That's not what I'm talking about.
Mhm.
People people should know what their health boundaries are. I'm not talking about mind. I'm not talking about I'm talking about your relationship to inflammation,
Yeah.
your relationship to free radical damage, your relationship to liver detox, your relationship to vitamin D utilization, your relationship to gluten, your relationship to caffeine, your relationship to histamines, your relationship to carbohydrates, your
Mhm.
relationship to genes that control satiety, meaning do you feel full
Mhm.
after normal amounts of food?
Mhm.
Like where is
That the
where's
bad
the
thing, right?
controversy around that?
100%. And I agree. But I was just worried. I was just wondering, like, because people get offended at anything. You could say anything, and people get offended by it. It's like, well, and I think do you know what's really interesting though? Like, and I'd love to know your take on this as being somebody who's working in a field like this, right? So my friend Eileen has a little boy called Charlie who is like a level 3 autistic, right?
Mhm.
She's called the Autism Cafe on socials. I don't know if you've come across her stuff, but Charlie is
Not yet.
like Charlie has like severe issues, right? Like he regressed. He has no speech and language, and he has to use like an ACC, like he has to use some accommodations, like an iPad or a special machine to speak, right?
Mhm.
And he has crazy struggles, right? And it's quite heartbreaking. She documents quite a lot of it, and you see it in detail. And she's like, heck yeah, if somebody could give me a magic wand to cure my son's autism, I'd do it. And when I see the struggle she's having, I'm like, I understand, you know, because as somebody who has Asperger's or like level 2 autism, level 1 autism, you kind of you're seeing it from a different light. You know, you're experiencing it from a different light. And she says, it's not a superpower. This is a disability for my kid. Like this is like ruining his life. And I understand what she's saying, right? How do you feel about this kind of thing?
So it's very difficult trying to weave the needle of how do how do I move through the world with as much dignity as possible, dignity and self-determination, and the risk that people run into if we're pathologizing, or saying like, hey, we can help you with your thing.
Mhm.
And the implication is that if we can help you with your thing, that implies that you need help
Hmm.
and that there's something broken, which then can imply that there's a subhuman or a lack of dignity or whatever it might be. And
Yeah,
it
you're
can
trying to
feel
eradicate.
if it can feel dehumanizing. And again, with the fraught roots of just by dint of where Dr. Asperger did his research, it's it's a non-trivial association that's there. It's just there, whether we like it or not. That link
Mhm.
between, oh, not less than perfect, and less than perfect means you should not exist. That the stench of that legacy is going to waft over Asperger's and autism forever,
Yeah,
and
it's
that's
never
just
gonna.
a
Yeah,
reality.
yeah,
So,
yeah.
so people are a bit more sensitive to this perception. I deeply understand it. So it's sensitive, not in a bad way. Sensitive, like, yeah, that stench of Dr.
Sensitive to it.
Asperger is
Yeah.
it's going to be there. Now for me, if if it were any other thing, that if I am not, if my personal lived experience is not ideal, and from how I define ideals, like I wish I would
Yeah.
do better. I wish I would feel better in this thing, or
Yeah.
my family.
Conditions of
If
life.
it
Yeah.
were any other situation, we'd be like, sure, we'd love to help. So, for example, I got Lyme disease when I was a kid. Now, if instead of Lyme disease, it was this neurological thing, if it was just somehow Lyme disease was not a pathogen, but it was some sort of brain makeup that will adjacent to autism. And I'm not
Hmm.
saying Lyme disease is autism. I'm just saying if it had a similar kind of
Yeah.
social identity,
A way of
social
presenting it.
a way of understanding it. Now, if I told someone I have Lyme disease and they said, "Oh, by the way, I have something that can make your life infinitely easier.
Mm.
And by the way, you're not broken that you have this thing. It's just like we can help
It's-
you with that." No one would say no to that.
yeah, exactly. I mean, it's like because you're trying to improve the condition towards life, right? Like you're trying to upgrade that um the conditions. Like we all want to have the best life as possible, right? That's the whole idea because that gets us closer to survival, and that's our binary like sense of why we're here.
Yeah.
And that's really interesting, and I get it because somebody says to me like, you know, it would if you could cure autism, would you take the pill? And I'm like, well, I don't know. I would like some things, taken away that really impact my life, but then
It's
I
a
love the
package
fact
deal.
how yeah, but it's a package deal. So it's like, well, how do I
Package deal.
yeah. So
Yeah.
it's really interesting. And I just wanted to bring that up. I didn't want to skew the conversation, but I think that it was just really cool. I'd love to get your opinion on it. Now, so tell me, comedy and autism. I want to
Can I
know.
just go back to the
Yeah,
package deal bit? I just want to tie a
please,
bow around.
please, please.
I think so. That, like, I want to go back to the superpowers and kryptonite
Hmm.
analogy.
Hmm.
If there's a way that we can minimize the impact of kryptonite and still keep the superpowers, why would anyone say no to that?
Yeah, exactly.
That's where I'm coming from.
Yeah.
The over, look, if I, my hearing sensitivity, I devoted 3 minutes of my entire 60-minute special to this.
Hmm.
I can't go to concerts because
Hmm.
it's so overwhelming. There's so many things I can't do about it. And yes, I can wear earplugs, but I also feel socially disconnected and all, like, it's just
Yeah,
earplugs are
it is hard. Yeah,
it's not ideal.
no.
So here's the package deal. I believe the sound sensitivity for me, or smell sensitivity for others, or
Yeah.
visual sensitivities for me and others, and all, it's part of the same process that the apertures of sense perception, sight,
Uh-huh.
smell, sound,
Yeah.
they're dilated much wider And so we can't titrate the amount of stimulus that's coming in. That's why it's overwhelming and at times incredibly painful and even
Yes.
crippling.
Yeah,
Like
debilitating, 100%.
debilitating. Now, it's a package deal because it's those same apertures of sense perception that are wide open that
Mhm,
give us the capacity for massive knowledge information retention and
mhm,
observation of things that other people miss. We see patterns and see details that other people miss. It's
mhm,
the same mechanism.
mhm,
The
mhm.
sensory overwhelm is the package deal to all the other ways we process information differently from the
Yeah,
more normal population. So if you're
100%.
taking a pill to end autism, we're ending all of it. Like
Yeah, the whole
it's
thing
the
is
package, it's
yeah.
different. We're not going to be the same person. Are
Mhm,
there parts about me that there are parts about me that I know that are completely unique and like an N of one in a way to serve the world and to help others. And there's parts about me that if I could wave a magic wand, I get rid of like the sound sensitivity because it's socially isolating and it's debilitating.
yeah,
But I have to come to peace with it's part of the package deal. And but there are ways, say through genetics testing, where I
mhm,
can reduce the inflammatory burden on my body. I can
mhm,
reduce the toxic burden. I can reduce the the food reactivity burden because if I know my reality, then I
mhm.
can operate within my reality much better. And so then I can now live more of my superpowers and be less vulnerable to the kryptonites.
Yeah, and I agree, and I think like those things are so valuable, and that's why like therapy, some medications, maybe especially with ADHD, coaching, counseling, all of those things kind of tie in really well because there's different things for different people, right? And I
Mhm.
think like especially autistic individuals or ADHD individuals, there's going to be some pathways that are kind of like more suited to you than others, and I think that's why there's so many of us in this field, and we have so much to offer. Now,
Mhm.
so I have two questions. First of all, my biggest question is, okay, so you do comedy, right? I've done a comedy and
Right.
you're on the spectrum, but that
Mhm.
must mean that you pull a crowd of people on the spectrum. Now, I am terrible with sarcasm when I don't know the person, right? Like I have no idea. Like I take things very literally, and this is experience, right? So how do you deal with this of being a comedian?
I have an entire section on sarcasm in my show.
Okay.
So yeah, like the highlight, like there's so much. There's I counted about 60 separate topics
Okay.
from sound sensitivity to going on dates to literalism to special interests to masking to the history of Asperger's
Hmm.
to navigating the fraught field of nomenclature and the labels we put on ourselves or thrust upon us to bullying to identifying the difference between how to spot a narcissist versus a sociopath versus a psychopath, which is a public service I did because us people on the spectrum were naive to the manipulations of others until we see the pattern. Then we're the
Hmm.
best at spotting them.
Hmm.
Uh, so that
That's
was
super interesting, isn't it?
that's a public service I put in the show was to help people identify those three main aversive personalities. And
Mm.
when you're talking about going back to sarcasm,
Yes.
the uh, are you asking me like how do I identify if someone's being sarcastic towards me, or how do I explain and help other people to navigate sarcasm, or
The
how
latter,
do I?
because
Okay,
yeah, because like
okay.
if if you're telling a joke, you're trying to make people laugh. They're like, you know, especially as autistic peeps, we're just like, huh, what? Like I
Well,
don't even get.
my humor is not sarcastic. Number one.
Okay, so it
So
doesn't
just
go.
like
Okay.
I just like I don't use curse words and I don't use politics and I don't do body fluid jokes. I don't
Hmm.
do sarcasm unless I explicitly say this is a sarcastic remark
Hmm.
because I'm aware of that difficulty to translate. And the other way that I navigate sarcasm, it's not necessarily sarcasm that I do, it's act outs where I
Okay.
flip into a different character. And when my stage coach, um, she'd done fringe festivals for 15 years internationally, and we went through the final draft of the show and she helped me with blocking, where the narrator is facing the audience directly. And if I turn and I face to the right, that's me and my exaggerated Aspie character. And
Hmm.
if I turn and face to the left, I'm in the normie whoever, whatever normie I'm trying to act out. So she told me, make it as easy as possible for the audience to understand who you are on stage. So this is one method of when I turn, and I don't tell them this, I don't tell the audience this. It becomes habituated because I'm so consistent with it
Mhm.
that when I turn and face this way, I'm facing left, I'm acting out as I do an act out as some non-Aspie person. And then I change my voice, I change my gestures, I've changed my posture, and I've changed my direction.
Mhm.
So I'm making it very, very, very clear that I am
Which
doing something different with a
yes.
different voice, a different action, and a different direction. Those are three major clues that I'm not saying the thing. My words are not necessarily matching if I was being the narrator,
Mhm,
if that
mhm.
makes sense.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
there's ways to do it by making it very. And I also find sarcasm is also the lowest form of wit. I don't find sarcastic humor very funny.
Mhm.
Sarcasm is not actually that funny. It's a form of social manipulation, to be really honest.
Isn't it like
And
the highest form of wit?
the lowest form of wit.
Sorry, lowest form, but
Sarcasm.
highest form of intelligence, right?
S-
That's the full saying.
Sarcasm?
Yeah, that you got like satisfaction killed the cat. No, sorry, curiosity killed the cat. Satisfaction brought him back. And to say sarcasm's lowest form of wit, highest form of intelligence. There's always
I,
like an extra piece. Yeah, and I didn't.
I've never heard the second half of that, so
Well,
I cannot
let's
confirm nor deny it.
Okay, hold on. Full sentence on sarcasm is the lowest form of wit, right? Let's have a look. See what the full sentence is.
Okay,
So
we're
we're
going
just
to
doing a
our
Google here.
AI
Here
meeting,
we go.
our AI moderators here.
Yeah, the full commonly cited quote
Uh,
attributed to Oscar Wilde, obviously fantastic writer.
uh
Sarcasm is the lowest form of wit, but the highest form of intelligence. Wow, there you go, Oscar Wilde.
Okay.
So
Well,
they, but yeah.
who am I to judge Oscar Wilde? And he's one of the. Uh, I will say that uh, uh, yes, that literally is the first time I've ever heard the second half of that quote. I personally feel like sarcasm is the highest form of intelligence is a wrong, because it can also lead to this idea like, oh, if I'm sarcastic, that means I'm smarter than you. Like that's not a healthy way to live
Yeah, I guess like that.
at
Yeah.
all.
No, and I don't think anybody would really say that, but like I think Oscar Wilde was just reflecting on the capacity of intellect. So if somebody's really sarcastic, kind of like when people say like you use comedy to cover up your own insecurities, a little bit like that.
Who's covering it
Sarcasm.
up? I'm being explicit.
Yeah.
I'm,
But like
I'm not covering up a thing. I mean,
no,
literally,
some
the end
people
of the
do.
show, the
Yeah.
end of the show, I cite a very, I have my own ident. So here we go, mirroring Oscar Wilde. Here's my own Oscar Wildeism of
Here
my
we
own
go. Here we go.
creation. So
You don't have a mirror, do you?
it's been said that art is the receipt for pain.
Okay. That's
My
really
addendum,
interesting.
my addendum to that, the addendum to art is the receipt for pain is, and stand-up comedy is itemizing that receipt in public.
Well, yes, and I can add to it as well. Pain is a human experience that's guaranteed, but suffering is a choice. So it depends what you're gonna do with that, right?
Right. Thank
That
you
is
for that.
so that is so funny, dude. Like I and you're right. Like I suppose, like autistic comedians, they ain't hiding anything. They're just being honest, man.
No,
Um,
no, no.
But my last question, we have like 9 minutes left
Uh-huh.
before we have to call this episode a day. I have a question for you, okay? So, and this is more of a serious question, and I love comedy, and I love what you're doing. And before we had this call, we did converse via email a little bit, and you sent me a link to your um YouTube channel, and I watched a couple of videos sitting here chuckling to myself. It was really good. You're very professional, and it's
Thank you.
hard to find a good comedian just straight off the bat that you can just really have affinity for or kind of warm to without knowing them for a while. You have to like warm into comedians. Dude, you were just so good. So I highly advise anybody who's listening right now, check the show notes and the description of this video on YouTube so that you can go through and watch Dr. Sam's videos and stuff because he's so funny. But yeah, dude, you're awesome. So thanks for that. So comedy aside, something that's come up and recently, and my friend said this to me, right? He said, dude, he's had ADHD, and he's also a comedian actually.
Mhm.
And he was like, but he's just ADHD, he's not ADHD. And he said to me, dude, what is going on with ADHD diagnosis, dude? Like it's like I struggle my entire life, and like sometimes I feel like ending it all because I'm so at the end of my wits, right? And I can understand that. And then says, and then some like random like Gen Z like prances over and says like, "Oh, I also have some ADHD as well. Whoop 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 whoop. It's amazing." And then like they dawdle off, and he's like, "You, what is going on?" Like everybody, like if he says like, "Sorry, I'm struggling a bit. I do have ADHD and I'm struggling," let's say, "I have it too. You're fine." And it's kind of like he said to me, his words were, "I want to punch all those people in the face." And I
Mhm.
was like, "Yeah, dude, I understand." What do you think is going on? I feel like we're having this overdiagnosis of ADHD, like almost like they're just saying they're trying to, I don't know what they're trying to dilute the severity of it. I don't understand. Like, what do you
I
think's
think
going
so. It's a multifactorial issue. One is so, and the I'd say like the yin yang of this feeds on
on?
each other. So, number one,
Mhm.
there is infinitely more awareness about ADHD, whether it's ADHD or Asperger's or autism, whatever it is. Like there's infinitely more awareness of it, which means that people who were struggling now have a legitimate community, common language, um, and resources and tools and most importantly, I mentioned earlier, the community. Like there's now and that is critical, that is vital, that is needed, that it was and it's been too long. And whether you're part of the ADHD community or another community,
Mhm.
and so what's happening is that people are finding each other, and then it's like a gravitational well, like sudden, like there's a consolidation, a gravitational force where people, and then you've got the algorithms that are feeding, hey, I'm struggling with this, and this, and then suddenly you're fed ADHD
Mhm.
algorithms or whatever
Yes. Yeah.
or
Yeah. Yeah.
whatever. So there is this kind of gravitational force that's happening with all of the educational pieces that are out there.
Uh-huh.
Then you have that's the one part of the yin yang. Then the not so great part of the yin yang is the following: is there's perverse incentives. There is a perverse incentive structure that some people
Mhm.
take advantage of, knowingly or unknowingly.
Mhm.
You'll notice how careful I was with some of those descriptors. Some people are taking advantage of this because there's a perverse incentive. So I'll give you the classic example, which happened to me which happened in my high school in the 90s.
Okay. Hit
So
me.
this is you had parents buy off diagnosticians to label their kid with ADHD so they could have sit their SATs untimed.
Ouch. Yeah.
40 the article came out this week or last week that 40% of Stanford students, 40%
Holy smokes. Okay.
are diagnosed with disabilities. And there is a percentage of them that is doing this to take advantage of the reality that if you have a disability, you can lobby to get a private dorm room, untimed tests, and other advantages. So
Yes.
there's a level of parasitism
Mm. In
that's
the hop.
taking it.
Yeah.
So your friend feels like he wants to punch these people. I think for those people, yeah, I would agree with him. Definitely punch them in the face.
Because they're just
Uh,
diddling the system, right?
Totally. And so now the other perverse incentive that's happening is that the same school and college counselors and other people who are involved in the ecosystem and economics of this is that the more people you have that you can diagnose on campus,
Hmm.
the more money your department gets, the more power and prestige you also get. So there is a now they might not be realizing it, but it's just happening that
Mhm.
you're creating your own engine for
Mhm.
prestige,
Mhm.
power, or profit. And so now to deny that that doesn't exist would be a severe error in judgment, but to say everyone's doing it because they're trying to take advantage is also a deep error in judgment. And I don't have a ratio of what percentage of one to the other. I don't have that of how much parasitism is going on versus how
Mhm.
much legitimate people are finding out. Oh, this is real for me, and I finally have community, a common language, books, support, and
Yeah.
resources available to me. I don't have a breakdown of the ratio of what's parasitism versus what's legitimate.
See, that's the thing, like, how are we even gonna navigate that? And one of the biggest things, and this is the last thing I'll say on it, is that, I'm an advisor for the Welsh, because I live in Wales, so I'm also,
Mm,
well, I live in Wales and Canada, but I live in Wales 50% of the time, and so I'm an advisor to the Welsh government's neurodiverse kind of sect, and the ADHD part, we had a meeting about it, and they said that they were trying to accommodate people who identify as ADHD, so they don't even need to diagnose it. I said, "Well, guys, what are we doing here? We're getting further away from the mission here." And I know that there are some people who are undiagnosed due to lack of, economics, healthcare systems, loads of things, right? But
mm,
then also we have to have some standard bar, right? Like there has to
mhm.
be some entry level bar like that we go through and filter out, because otherwise we're going to be burning through resources and helping people who don't even need the help versus somebody who desperately needs the help. So it was really interesting to have your take on that. And I think you're absolutely right. Like I agree with what you're saying. And how do we navigate that? Well, at the moment, I don't know if whoever comes up with that is the
So
winner.
it's the criteria, you're always, you're always going to end up with, in evolutionary psychology, we call it the freeloader problem. It's
Yeah.
like wherever you create a system, you'll always have freeloaders, and you have freeloaders at one end of it, and you have hoarders at the top. So this is the constant dance between um, people who hoard resources and people who parasitize off of resources that are given freely and more available to everyone else, and that they're not actually contributing back, versus people who are just taking,
Mhm.
but they're uh, so that's a whole other long conversation, the dichotomy between those two.
Mhm.
But if you're wanting to minimize the freeloader problem, then there has to be some sort of standards and a way of monitoring and um, sifting out people who are trying to game the system.
Yeah.
Is there a clean, easy, direct way to do that? No, because the nature of someone trying to game the system is they'll try to game the roadblocks you put in front of them gaming it. Like it's this
Mhm.
and it's
It's
this
then
constant uh uh a feedback loop of people, of you put up guardrails and then people find a way around those guardrails, and you put up more guardrails and you find out it's unending. Doesn't
Mhm.
mean you shouldn't try, doesn't mean you shouldn't do it, but it's a problem that's not going to ever end in the technical sense.
Exactly, and I think, yeah, we're gonna be up against the system until we I don't know if there is a figure out. Anyway, Sam, thank you so much, or Dr. Sam, sorry, thank you so much for joining today. It's been absolutely insightful, and I'm gonna have you back again because I think we can talk about many things since we
Totally.
vibe on the same level. And everybody check out your socials. I'll leave a link for it in show notes and in the description of the videos where this appears. Sam, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much for hosting me.